Last year I just talked under the title of Cockney, but this year estuary English has been in the news quite a lot more. Both of them are varieties of English spoken in the London area. Cockney is the traditional name for working class English of London, and it deviates from standard English received pronunciation in a number of different ways. In fact, popular English in many parts of England differs in its grammar from the grammar of standard English, by which I want to say that the ways in which you get deviation in popular English are often the same in many different parts of the country. It isn't a situation that you've got sharply different dialectal grammar, so there is that to some extent, but there are a number of points in which most popular varieties of English differ from the standard. We'll look at those in just a minute when we look at the grammar points. Cockney also has a number of special features, such as rhyming slang, but Cockney is extremely influential, and a large number of examples of rhyming slang have gone from Cockney into general English, so that everybody uses them, perhaps in more casual styles of speech, but they're known to everybody. And in many cases, their origin as rhyming slang has been lost. Cockney, the broadest kind of London working class speech, the kind that deviates most strongly from received pronunciation. This is clearly a southeastern accent. It has many features associated more generally with the southeast of England. However, London does lie on the border of two traditional dialect areas, namely that of East Anglia to the north, Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, and that of Kent to the southeast, Sussex, so that historically speaking it represents a mixture of at least these two kinds. On the other hand, Cockney is very innovative, it's full of changes. Generally speaking, we can say that all of the historical changes that have taken place in the history of RP also apply to Cockney, but there's an additional 2 or 3 centuries worth of new changes that have come on top of that. So it's very innovative. This is explained by the fact that it is the most imitated of local accents, the one that is the most influential in spreading out. And many of the sound changes of the last 500 years that we now regard as quite standard art of received pronunciation, many of these, I believe, started as London popular pronunciations and then spread out socially and geographically from there. Well, in London, as in most parts of Britain, we have a continuum of varieties of English. That is to say, it's not the case that people either speak Cockney or they speak standard English. It's not the case that people's pronunciation is either broad Cockney or received pronunciation. On the contrary, most people speak somewhere between these two extremes. Most people control a range of possibilities so that they can switch stylistically up or down that scale. Everywhere, standard English and implicitly received pronunciation is regarded as the high variant, the careful variant, the beautiful variant, the educated variant. Whereas Cockney or other working class varieties are the low alternative, but nevertheless enjoying another kind of prestige because they have what's known as street cred, street credibility. That is, they have the aura, the glamour of working class culture, and many people secretly perhaps admire this, although they don't say they admire it, but they certainly show they admire it by imitating it. And one of the very evident phenomena of the last 20, 30 years has been that even among those who grew up in RP-speaking families, even those who come from an upper-class background, you find an increasing imitation of what might be seen as Cockneyisms, of certain phonetic features at any rate, which are associated with lower down the scale. Many commentators have commented on this, It's very evident in the speech of the royal family. If you compare Princess Di or Prince Andrew, or particularly Sarah Ferguson, with the speech of Prince Charles or the Queen, they are full of features which are generally regarded as vulgarism, but nevertheless, because they're 20, 30 years younger than me, they're all right for them. On the back of the handout, I've reproduced an article which appeared in last Sunday's paper, so just 3 days ago, in The Independent on Sunday, by a journalist, not a specialist politician, but it seems to me to be a very sensible and balanced article. You see the strapline across it: the upper class young already talk estuary English, the cockneyfied accent of the southeast. Well, what is this estuary English? The term was invented 10 years ago by one David Rosewarne, whose name you can see at the bottom of the handout. And David Rosewarne wrote an article in the Times Educational Supplement, because this name has become quite widely known by non-specialists, so we are now stuck with it. I'd rather speak of London English or general London English. The claim is, though, that you see it's spread out from London itself to the surrounding area. And there's a pseudo-scientific map that appeared in a book that came out recently, supposedly showing estuary English spreading out from the heartland of estuary, which is the Thames estuary, the estuary of the River Thames, spreading out from there into sort of surrounding areas. Now, the claim is here that we shall no longer be able to say that the only non-localizable accent is received pronunciation. Until now, as Neil Acheson very well describes it, the only people who would say they don't really come from anywhere would be the upper class who spoke with received pronunciation, which was not attached to any particular part of the country. If you asked an upper class person where you come from, he'd be sort of embarrassed, because you don't come from anywhere in particular. You might have your country seat in one county, but you also have a house in London, in town, and you maybe have a country cottage somewhere else again. So you would say, well, I spent a lot of time in Devonshire, or I was actually brought up in Lancashire, but that's sort of seen as irrelevant. Well, I'm not really of an upper class background, but I suppose I am of an upper middle class background, and far enough up to share this feeling to some extent. I grew up and was brought up in Lancashire, but I also went to school in the south of England, to boarding schools, and to that extent it's not surprising that my pronunciation is not localizable within England. Those who are born to receive pronunciation don't have a local accent. Well, what may be happening, you see, is that here we have another accent, estuary English, that is beginning to take on this characteristic of not being localizable. It hasn't got there yet, but if we find people growing up in Liverpool and Leeds and Newcastle and Exeter talking with estuary English, then we should really want to say that. The other claim is that it might be a suitable model for foreign learners, and we'll perhaps talk about that a bit later on.